Hi, it's Dr. Parikh, and this is pretty exciting because this is the last video that you need to watch before turning in your paper. The only video left in the course is going to be focused on just what happens next. So let's go. We'll do one walkthrough of the paper before you turn it in. Again, there's no template for various reasons. So I will just use the sample paper, and if there's any errors in the formatting, sometimes it's just from uploading it into Google Docs. But if there is a mistake, I'll point it out. So for this one, I'm using the ADHD one, Influence of Age over the Effectiveness of ADHD Treatment. Again, the titles on these are not usually great. I don't work very much with you on the title, so that's a skill that you'll work on as you go. But you can just double check that the running head and the page number all line up. Running head should have a capital R, a lowercase everything else, and a colon at the end, and then the running head itself should be all caps, and it should make sense given your new focus on a research proposal. Sorry, every time my videos finish saving, they pop up, and I'm really anxious to finish up this video series before I go pick my kid up at daycare. So I'm trying to truck on through. So make sure you update your title. Obviously your name will be here instead of redacted. These I just redact for the privacy of people who are giving samples. You'll have an abstract. The word abstract will be centered at the top, but not bolded. And check where things get indented and not indented again. The new manual might change some of these things because they mentioned trying to clarify, streamline, make it more accessible. So I'm guessing they're trying to get rid of some of the silly rules that don't seem to mean anything or help anything. I'm not sure. So your abstract should get at least half, if not more, rewritten because you're refocusing it from focusing on your introduction to really focusing more on your research proposal. So you're really looking at your hypothesis instead of a thesis, and then trying to give some information about how things will be assessed. Your keywords might update, they might not. Make sure that if you change your title on the title page, you also change it here in the main body on page 3. And also make sure that your running head for the rest of the paragraph or paper matches whatever you have on page 1. This roadmap paragraph is a bit long. I don't like to see a paragraph go more than half a page. Ideal is about a third of a page, so a quarter of a page to a third of a page-ish. But if you're more than half, you really need to think about how to cut things out or divide things up. In this case, you might look at what could go elsewhere in the paper or just be cut completely. It looks like they probably go a little more into detail than they need to about how the study is going to happen. Here, you're really just giving us a preview. You have introduction, bolded, centered, with a background paragraph, and here I'm not sure why there's 2 paragraphs. Again, it's probably a little more detail than is needed here. You could probably stick some of that detail into the themes, or even potentially add another theme, but usually 2 themes is what sets a nice pace for this length of paper and for the number of sources you have. Sorry, my words are going, my brain is mushing, but I really just want to power through these. So you still have your headings. Those likely won't change unless you need to really reorganize from your introduction. But if you set a nice, or from your literature review, but if you set a nice outline the first time and did a lot of work on the pre-writing activities, most likely the structure you set for your literature review can carry over to your outline or to your introduction, and there will be smaller changes that you need to make. You can see there's still lots of references. And here you'll notice there's a little gap at the bottom of the page because there's room for one more line here at the bottom of the paragraph on page 5, but there's only 2 lines left in the paragraph, and so if there was 1 line on page 5, there would only be 1 line on page 6. And most word processors automatically set to not leave a single line to not leave a single line either at the beginning or the end of a paragraph. They call it avoiding widows and orphans. And then we have the present study paragraph. The present study heading goes over to the left, just like any of the theme headings do. And the paragraph that you wrote goes right in there. And then you jump into your method with method centered. You don't need a paragraph right under the word method. Instead, you have participants over to the left. And remember, often, but not always, that means that method gets pushed down to the next page because you need 4 lines to have anything. But in this case, method goes, it's still on the same page as the present study. You don't need to, you never need to force it down just for the sake of starting on a new page, only if it's going to separate the headings from the paragraph. You will, let's see, yeah, so you will talk about your participants. Here you can see some of this, so the race is listed in the paragraph. You'll see that a lot in the sample papers, but follow the way that I've done it in the method draft that I've given you, because I've tried to update and stick a little closer. Again, APA style, the 6th manual isn't super clear on how they want to see these things, but I've done my best to try to be more consistent. So if there's a difference between how a sample paper does this, particularly with the italic terms, I want to see those set aside in parentheses. So focus more on how I do it in my sample draft. So you'll have the method section with the participants, measures, and procedure. And again, make sure that you match everything throughout that section, especially between the participants and the procedure. Then you'll have the results, which is usually a pretty short paragraph because you don't have much to talk about yet. And then discussion, you'll have, instead of the overview paragraph you had before, you'll now have 2 paragraphs, a summary and an interpretation. Now, a lot of the terms I'm using here, if there's not a heading on it, it's a term I've kind of made up just so that when I say these, when I try to explain what goes where, I can say summary and interpretation, and you kind of have an idea of what I'm referring to. You'll see these sorts of things being done right under the discussion heading, but it's not necessarily, if you go to grad school and you tell your advisor, yeah, the interpretation paragraph, they won't necessarily know what you're talking about. But if you say the participants section, they'll know exactly what you're talking about. And I just noticed here at the end of this one paragraph, there's a little extra spacing. You can see there's more space between outcome and limitations than there is between limitations and although. So when you're copying and pasting, always check for things like extra spacing that can slip in and sneak into your formatting. So here they've got limitations, professional applications, and future research. You're going to have limitations in future research and then professional applications. And sometimes you'll even see professional applications folded in with the conclusions, but for this paper I want to see you have it as its own paragraph still. Then you'll see the conclusions paragraph, which again should be rewritten because you want to refocus it on the take-home message that your study will have and why your study is important. Your references, you'll have all the references from your research or from your literature review, but you'll also add in references for your for the measures that you're using. So always check to make sure if you've added any new references that need to go in. And the word references will go up top, it will not be bolded, and this always starts on a new page, regardless of where you end your conclusion. And that's your research proposal. So a lot of it, so your literature review themes come through mostly intact, but you may revise them. You may revise them a little, you may revise them a lot, but you should do at least some revision to them. Almost everything else gets heavily rewritten or completely rewritten. And for the most part, you can really follow the template that's in the sample paper, or follow the pattern that's in the sample papers, except that the discussion, I changed the heading slightly. So that is your research proposal. Happy writing. Bye-bye.